Well, hello and welcome to This Is Not About the Coronavirus.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, well, you know, said Tide Pod. So, this evening, welcome everybody. This is our, whatever date it is, 3/23/2020. Saying 2020 is odd. Welcome to the live stream. This mask is going to last about 10 more seconds. So we're going to do a little recap on our Vision trip, how Vision was. We have two special guests. I mean, everyone else here is special also, but two very special guests for today.
We have some really special people.
Okay, that's about as long as that was.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We got that over with.
So we're going to do a little recap on Vision.
All
this
worth
year.
that one laugh, right?
Yes. A little recap of Vision this year. Talk to our special guest, our very special guest. We're going to, we got some case studies if we've got time, all kinds of fun stuff. So, Bryn, if you would introduce our two special guests again, please.
Well, we have Matt Fonslow from Canada and
South Canada. It's South Canada.
Lower Canada. And then Chris Groff tonight. As Keith mentioned, we're very excited about chatting about Vision. Vision was a really good time this year. We had a great time this year, but a couple things specifically. One thing we want to celebrate is there's so many of us. We're fortunate enough to present in some way or another at Vision. And best I know, everything went pretty well, I guess. They may not keep us from coming back next year, but there's a lot of cool stuff. One thing I wanted to invite Matt on, because it was Matt's idea for one of the coolest sessions. I may be biased, but one of the coolest sessions during Vision was Tech Talks. We want to talk to Matt about that. And but also Matt and Harv, the late great Harv, used to do every year for years. I don't know how many years. Matt, how many years was the hands-on scope class?
I'm not sure I even know.
I think I attended in 2013 or 14, maybe 14.
The sick part is probably longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of an outlier in that it's really rare for Vision to have a single class kind of repeat itself for more than a couple years. And we went, I want to say it's 7. It might have been longer. And never had an issue filling the class.
Yeah, you guys could have sold the class several times. In fact, you said that you wanted the class size limited even more than it usually was, right?
It's usually a attendee to vehicle ratio issue. There's only so many vehicles, and you start to get too many people per vehicle, and then you got an issue with personalities. Not so much that they clash, but you have a more alpha type personality at the vehicle, and they're running the scope running the equipment rather than letting everybody kind of have a turn.
I don't know. I was pretty much fighting everybody the whole time. Elbows flying. No, I think I attended 2013 and 2014 a lot of my first years there. But you and Harv put this on, and you guys would co-teach this. It was a hands-on scope class for those that don't know. Snap-on and Pico both. You both covered both of those products every year that you and Harv did it, didn't right?
Yeah, it really started probably 2008-ish when I took a job with the company that would eventually become Pico USA. And so I called up Sherry Hamilton, who pretty much orchestrates Vision, and asked her about a Pico class all day. And I taught it, at the hotel or at the conference center. And it was a large room, and, you try to do everything in demo mode, and it just became very evident it needed to be hands-on. So then I pitched the hands-on Pico class, which first was in a classroom with a live vehicle, and we ran a scope net, if you will, the cables running to a breakout box because we lucked out and got a Ford. So we had a the EEC5 breakout box, 101 pin EEC5 breakout box, and everybody sat at the table with their laptops and their Picos connected to this car. And then I had ran it. Harvey had helped me with that. Paul Suter helped me, and Bob Hype. And on the way back to the Vision trade show after that, I was talking to Harvey about we should have it hands-on, multiple cars, and we should just have everybody bring whatever scope they got. And that's really when Harvey and I started doing that together at Jefferson Community College out there.
Cool.
and we didn't stop until he got sick.
You guys were you planning? Let's see. It was not. So it was 2018 is the year he got sick. Not.
No, I think it was 17. We skipped 17,
Uh,
and then 18 he was gone.
and then you and Mana did a classroom with a live car class.
Yep. Yep. Basically, Snap-on,
2019.
Pico, and ATS through WorldPack.
And you got that
was the sick
ATS.
year.
Yeah, that was everybody was patient zero, but this
Mostly
year
me.
you got the ATS scope like a week before the class or something. You said?
I never got it. Yeah,
Oh.
I didn't. My hands-on time with it was a weekend down at Scott's shop to try to familiarize myself with it, and I don't think anyone really could tell until the end. There was a couple moments where you could tell. I had to think about what I was doing to get it to do what I wanted it to do. I think I was moving traces up and down in deeper chord, and you could tell.
You probably saw the ATS guys in the front seat trying to jump up.
They're in the front right next to me, well placed.
I'm the first person to say that scope is a pain in the ass to use, but it does grow on you.
I don't know. I had it from that, part of that far sight for a long time, and I could never make.
You know what it is? You know what it is it's a different way of thinking, but if you understand what they're trying to do with it and the limitations of it, it's really great. Because Chris, later when we talk about that Nissan, that's what we used all day on a car that we're going to talk about. And,
yeah, despite the fact that I tried to switch.
Yeah, despite they tried to, but there was some spots in there that was kind of helpful. That dual time base is pretty nice.
Yeah, I can see maybe. I don't know. I've had it for a while, and I gave up. But yeah, so this year you guys brought it back off-site. This year, it wasn't at the college this year, right? Was it at AE Tools or something?
The scope class was at was at the community college.
Oh, was it? Okay.
And they totally redid the automotive shop area, different building. So essentially brand new, beautiful facility. And Scott Schotten asked if I'd be interested in doing that. And I said, yeah. And it was Pico only. So attendees were asked to bring Pico scopes and laptops. And
so you actually had good waveforms this time then?
A couple.
No pressure.
We had to use a lot of filtering.
Speaking of which, your wife, Keith, Liz was there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, she was a first-time attendee this year.
And then Patrick Master's girlfriend.
Yeah,
right?
Kate. Yep.
It's kind of cool.
And when I was talking earlier about alpha types, those were the two I was talking about.
Those are the throwing boats.
And
yeah.
first of all, that is not Liz Perkins. That is the better Perkins.
That is the better Perkins. The better looking, the better smelling.
Definitely smelling.
You could stop
Definitely.
there.
Yeah. I was going to go through some more senses, but
Yeah.
we'll leave it up to the imagination.
Having shared a room with you, yes, I agree. Better smelling.
She cannot outsleep your ass though.
No.
No, I shared a room with him at Vision last year or the year prior, and
He will
that guy-
fall
that guy-
asleep
He falls asleep in like 3.7 seconds.
mid conversation, man.
Oh, dude, yeah, he in the cabin. He came in. He was in his clothes. It was like, where am I sleeping? Cool, got by.
This year at Colorado, I was going over trying to print out some wiring diagrams for our scope class, and I said, Keith, do you know if this 2017 Colorado has high-speed CAN going to the DLC? He says, what? And I repeated the question, and literally he was snoring by the time I finished the question. It's incredible. It's like a freaking superpower, man.
He did the same thing to me at the AutoWares Expo in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, man, you're going to stay up? Like, yeah, I'll be here. He's like, all right, I'll be right back. I got to talk to Liz. Yeah, well, I'm still waiting.
I passed out talking to Liz. I was like, I need to go to.
Was that your?
Sorry.
Was that your first time teaching with co-teaching with Schotten, Matt?
Yes. Yep, that was the first time. But it turns out
Did
we complement each other really well. I'm sarcastic and he's not, so it works out really well.
I've not taken a class from you, Matt, but I have taken a shotgun class, and I will say he is in my top 5 of his ability to translate information to any listener.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
He's way
one of
better
my
at it than I
favorites.
am.
I mean, he is an educator by absolute profession. That's
Yeah, I think I almost need people like that around me when presenting, because if you kind of know what I'm talking about or get me and I talk about something, everybody nods their heads, they're with me. But if you don't, I don't know that I'm really good about restructuring that or rephrasing, where Harvey and Scott are brilliant at it. They're just
But Matt, somebody has to be the eye candy. All right, it's a burden. It's a burden,
Yeah.
and that's your burden. I mean, you're just pretty to look at.
carry your cross with pride.
Yeah. There's
You
certain
came
problems I wish I had, and that is one of them, and I don't have that problem.
You came on. You knew this was going on.
Well, Richard,
Yes.
you went from not teaching at Vision ever to teaching like 12 hours this year.
3 days in a row. Yeah.
How did that go? So you didn't swindle Kevin Leby to teach that last?
I tried my best to get Kevin to do the Sunday class. He wouldn't bite.
Wow.
But no, yeah. I went from attending Vision a couple of years to, oh my God, this would be cool to teach at one day to, hey, Rich, you want to do 2 classes and the tech talks and got in over my head. But I think it went really good. I got amazing feedback from my Friday class, the fundamental electrical class. And I have to say, I'm nervous as can be. And I see Gary Smith sit down at the back of my class. And I'm like, oh my God, I sat in his classes last year. I had already looked at the schedule and was thinking to myself, okay, there's a group of instructors teaching Friday that can't sit in my class. This is good. So I was super, super nervous. And at the first break, Gary came up and couldn't have said more encouraging words to me, put me at ease, made me realize, okay, I can do this. And yeah, I got good feedback from everybody. So I had a blast. That was awesome.
I got to tell you, I was looking at that same list of people teaching on a Friday, and I was just as excited that they were teaching at the same time you were.
Really? Yeah.
And then Jim Morton walked into my class, and I stuttered for a good 5-10 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, he snuck into mine a little bit. But
Yeah.
He was front row in the tech talk, so.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
I acknowledged him while he was there.
Yeah, a little bit. Richard, do you have like a highlight teaching moment out of any of those classes, out of the out of the 48 hours that you taught?
Yeah. I will tell you 2 things. I had a couple of automotive instructors in my Sunday morning class, and Sunday morning was electrical test tools. And it's a good class. I wasn't I wasn't so sure how well it would go over. But there was a couple of instructors that came up to me after and had heard 3 or 4 things that they had never thought of before. And one of the guys was explaining to me how this had kind of lit a fire under him for, I'm going to present it to my students this way. I'm going to make it a project. They're all going to build their own load box. And it really, it energized his, yeah, the professional teacher can't talk right now. He was excited to go back and use what he learned, and that made me feel good. And then I was in Atlanta the week after Vision, and 2 guys that come to my Atlanta classes were in my fundamental electrical class, and one guy said to me that class changed his life, that he wants to be a diagnostician. He understands wiring diagrams. He wants to learn this.
Was his name Winthorpe?
I don't think so. But that was awesome to hear that kind of feedback from the classes that I did, because that's the kind of thing that I took out of the classes when I attended them. So I had a blast. It was awesome.
Oh, cool. What I wasn't talking about your highlights.
I
was talking about their highlights, man.
What the hell are you doing? He just reaching by all nonchalant. These, behold my stuff.
All right, where were we?
I was asking about his attendees highlights. You want to share, like, throw you on a spot?
Me?
Yeah.
I already said, didn't I? I think I already said enough, didn't I?
No, you didn't say
No,
enough.
keep
but,
on going. Put the mask back on. Put the
how
bong
many
in there.
times? How many times did you teach that class before Vision, the fundamentals?
Only about how many days are in January? Yeah, I did it 4 nights a week sometimes, leading up to Vision. So I had the fundamental electrical class. I could do it in my sleep, I think. But
It's pretty awesome.
I brought a little test board, a little like a peg board that you could put lights and injectors and build a circuit. And as we're talking about basic circuitry, I was building the circuit in front of them and turning it on or performing a voltage drop test live in the class, so they could see it on the board and actually see it being done right in front of them, which I think really helped. So
I told you I would help you set up that, and I totally forgot.
it's quite all right. I snuck into the room the night before, set it all up, so I was good to go. I wasn't too nervous.
I mean, as technicians, we usually learn by doing anyway, so that kind of tactile thing there for them to mess with does solidify the process.
If you show them a series circuit and then you put 2 bulbs in series and they can watch it, watch the bulbs dim, it sinks in and they go, oh, okay, I get it. Or you're testing too, putting an amp clamp around it and turning an injector on or off or doing whatever testing we were doing.
I just thought of a board I'd like to make, like a voltage divider circuit, if you were to have a board that has that, because I think that messes with technicians with sensor circuits and stuff.
It does.
Why do I have 5 volts here? This is a signal and it's unplugged,
And that was something we did on the board too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about that. How the computer knows what it knows is what I always say. So I think it went good. Keith, how was your class?
Mine was good. I luckily was offsite at a different hotel. And I still had people come into it that made me nervous, but that's okay.
Who tripped you up in your class?
I didn't really get too nervous about it. I wrote the class for the most part, so it was a little easier, a little more second nature. I've taught variations of that class many times, so it was a little bit though being at Vision. It was a big honor first time being at Vision. I kind of, when I got back, I put all my badges. You guys keep all your badges from going to training events? I do.
Oh, yeah.
I hang them up.
Yep.
I think they're kind of neat. All the lanyards and stuff. So I kind of sat down. I put them all. I just stacked it and threw it in the drawer. And as I looked in there, I kind of noticed that that was my 4th year at Vision. So I was technician, and then owner, and then now trainer. So I thought that was a pretty interesting progression over a short 4-year period for me. That was something I was pretty interesting about. Now I did get a lot of really good feedback on some of the tips and tricks part of it. Programming's easy till it isn't, so it's a lot of just repetition and following instructions and all that. But what I did have good feedback on is I stayed till the end because I had 2 hours and 45 minutes to teach that class,
which is normally taught in 3.5 hours with breaks and stuff, right?
Yeah, and even that's kind of hard to push through all that. I stayed till the end and taught the entire thing and then answered every question, and I think that was what I got the most feedback on, was that I answered every question. But I don't have any real big aha moments. I had a lot of people in my class that have taken that class before, but I did get a lot of positive feedback the whole time.
Did you sign every autograph?
No, didn't sign any autographs.
What about the groupies, Keith? All of the groupies.
I mean, I do have a group of like 5 or 6 guys that will take that class no matter where I teach it, which is kind of neat. But they're guys that are programming every day, so they're trying to get those little pieces out. That's in the programming stuff. There's just so many little nuances that it's easy to listen to that class over and over again and pick up something different each time that you missed.
Cool.
Where's Martino?
Yeah, what's going on? Me? Well, I'm sorry for the people that attended my class.
Stop.
If I could offer you a refund. Honestly, no, it was. I feel the same way as Keith. Although, this is my 3rd year attending. It was an honor being there. I was nervous as hell. Although, like I said, Jim Morton came into class, tripped me up, made me stutter. It was great. But honestly, I don't know, like if you guys know him, Patrick Masters took my class, and he said it was good, and he doesn't like anything.
That's true.
Not great. It was just
He hates everything and thinks it's all a waste of time. Yet he still goes, and he liked it. And Chris was a great addition to the class too. I got to throw to him for the really technical stuff because I'm an idiot, and I let Chris take over. It was actually really great. But yeah, it was an awesome experience. Humbling, nervous, great.
Well,
Thanks,
I mean, I was there and I enjoyed it. It was very real.
Colorful.
It's colorful too. I didn't want to necessarily go there.
You had a bunch of people
Chris
running
is,
around with pictures of them on their magazines.
Who? What? No, I enjoyed the class. I think everybody that was there everybody that attended really enjoyed it. So I think it was great.
When I try to do something, when I try to speak, I do it as a point because I try not to be better than anybody because I'm not. I suck. But if I just tell people the truth and how it actually works, and if it's colorful, I don't care. I find it works that way. It creates. It's why you don't have a trainer than people are listening. Everybody's on the same level. If everybody's on the same level, they can learn together, and that's what it's all about. Oh, look at this. Hey,
I knew Keith was getting it.
that is sex on wheels right there. Look at that. My God. Look at that hair. Just look at that. And that smile.
I tried walking through the trade show for a little bit with Bryn. It was just a waste of time.
Sure.
Yeah, flocked with.
Bryn made me get him one.
So on page 46, I'll show you the other. There's another good picture in here on page 46.
So I made him.
For the
sign it for
centerfold,
me.
Keith?
Yeah, but they're stuck together. Hold on.
There's that professionalism we were talking about.
Mine are too. That's weird.
Little do you know, in that picture, put that picture back up. Put that picture back up. He's wearing sandals in that picture. Just letting you know that he's wearing sandals in that picture.
It is Florida.
I'm not even wearing pants
that's a serious face.
or shorts.
Serious face.
That's funny. I had to grab one though. I just didn't get my copy signed. He told me no. He says he's going to charge me $5 to sign it.
I got one at work.
Oh, they're
I got
charging-
one at home.
They're
To go through
charging
his
me.
publicist.
They're charging me $8 for a copy to send my mom. So
Oh, I will actually say a big thank you to Sherry and whoever else came up with that. I made a video for the backpack,
yes.
and I got a base camp backpack, and this is a fantastic backpack. I love this thing.
Yeah. I got one too for my horrible dad joke video.
Yeah. I will
yeah,
say
got
that
one.
I was highly impressed. I really appreciate that. That's a really nice backpack.
Yeah, those
They,
were nice.
somebody put real thought into choosing one.
speaking of which, Brian and Rich have been talking about these dad jokes forever.
Yeah, we
I
gotta
think
do that.
each one of you have to do one now.
No.
Now.
No.
Hold on.
No.
I gotta pull up the file.
You better send Rich the file too.
This is my file.
No, he's got yeah,
That's
I'm not on the right
Wait, there's a dad joke file?
I thought he was bringing up the dad joke intro.
What
Oh,
kind of
man.
cars
So maybe
do
we should
Cooks
fill
drive?
everybody else in on the inside joke here.
Hold on, no, I want to hear the dad joke. Wait a second. What do you got? What kind
I'm
What
not
kind of-
prepared.
What kind
I'm
of
not
cars
ready.
do Cooks drive?
of car? What?
What kind of cars do Cooks drive?
What do they drive?
Chevrolet.
Jeez. All right, that was a bad idea. I'll take it back right now.
Moving on.
Let's not do
Moving
any more
on.
of those.
That's
Yes.
so stupid.
I
Hold on.
thought you
One,
were gonna say Volkswagen.
oh, Jesus Christ. One more.
Oh no, you're gonna
Hang on.
regret it.
I gotta go through and get a good
Yeah.
one.
I'm telling dad jokes. Sometimes he laughs.
God.
Oh, boo.
Wah, wah.
Oh,
Wow.
But One more, Brian?
Hold on. There's a lot of stuff here.
Well, you gotta go read one?
No, I created a file.
He's so organized with his comedy.
I gotta beat Rich. I gotta be prepared.
I got the music in me. Come on.
You need to stand up and walk around like a stand-up comedian.
We need
Yeah.
the brick
Where do you-
wall behind
Get
us
all
too.
awkward with it. Yeah.
Where do Volkswagens go when they get old?
Oh God, where?
The old
Old-
Vauxhall.
The old Volkswagen.
Jesus, Rick had to steal the wine. Oh, fuck.
Guess
right.
what, guys? We're not going to dedicate a live stream to that.
We're definitely not doing that.
No.
All right, moving on.
We were supposed to keep this tight, and it didn't happen.
We always lose control.
I was going to say, well, once.
We
Never
actually
mind.
have cool stuff for you guys. But I wanted to talk about vision. We're all very excited because several of us obviously have been fortunate to be able to present there. But one of the things that most of are pretty excited about is this year was the very first Tech Talk session, which was Matt Fonslow's idea, and really the only reason we would have ever invited him on here.
Oh, he is the eye candy. What are you talking about? Look at this.
So what was
No,
the inspiration for this, Matt?
Honestly, it was talking to Sherry about really the age of the majority of instructors when you start rattling off your whatever Mount Rushmores or your top 5, top 10s. A lot of them are getting up there where, you know, they probably should be thinking about retirement. They would deserve that. Not saying they need to get out. I'm just
Hear that, Rich?
I think
sure.
you
know what I
just
I was wondering when it was coming. That was the best joke you've told.
but you know, trying to, and I was initially thinking youth, young technicians or what, you know, whatever, interested in teaching. They've gone to a Richard Falco class. They've sat in there and went like, you know, I think I'd like to do that, or, you know, but I don't have that much material. How do we get them up on stage? And how do you make it so they don't have to carry a whole class? If you want to teach at Vision, generally you need to have 3-4 hours of material, and it's you up there. Or if you go up there with somebody else, it's still between the two of you 3-4 hours, and you are solely responsible for carrying that class through to the end. That's a lot of pressure. That's enough to make you just say no thanks.
Yeah, every time.
Right? I mean, it's a problem. So how do we get around that? And could we do something where instead of having 1 or 2 presenters, we have 6, you know, and divide it up and give them each a half hour or 20 minutes or something of that nature to,
Or wait,
you know,
tell them that they only have 20 minutes, but then actually you tell them 30 minutes when they show up.
Well, that's
so,
good, because if he told us 30, it would have been 45.
right.
Exactly.
But really just what's enough time to go through a case study or 2, or an idea, a thought process, whatever it is, a perspective. And that's kind of where it went. And, you know, I didn't name it. It's a good name. Tech Talks is a really good name. Unfortunately, it made it sound like maybe it was stolen from TED Talks, but that really, you know, I'm not defensive about it. Just that wasn't the nature of the idea, but the name fits. That's exactly what it is. And, you know, I thought it went off really, really, really well. So Bryn was a presenter, Richard was a presenter, Chris was a presenter, Brian was a presenter. We're only missing really Keith?
Keith.
And Justin Morgan.
Oh,
which
Justin Morgan.
We should have invited him on.
So
Sorry, Justin. Didn't think
he'd
about
keep rubbing in that BMW that had all those parts on it.
Yeah, Matt, I heard you couldn't fix one. What?
Yeah. Was at your shop for how long?
it.
Months.
Apparently, you suck, Matt. I mean, that's what I got out of that story.
But the problem is
Notice
he didn't
I'm
need to
saying
sit through
quiet.
all that to find that out. I would have gladly told you that.
Yeah.
So what was really great was everybody really was dialed in on their times.
Yeah, the structure of the timing was outstanding. I was very surprised by that. I figured it would be kind of chaotic, but it just flowed nice.
I was super surprised how fast Bryn could talk. I've never seen
Oh,
him talk
God.
that fast in my life. I mean, I usually think he's on tranquilizers or something when he normally talks.
You can thank Matt for that. He told us we had 20 minutes.
But really, that was part of the attraction, don't you think? That because you were limited in your time, and everybody kind of knew that you were, quote unquote green or greener presenters, except for Richard. That trying to think of a good word, but it was almost endearing. It was almost endearing watching. Really, Bryn and Brian were the two that looked the most nervous. I'm not saying anybody else wasn't nervous, but you could really tell.
That was my first time presenting in front of anybody, and it happens to be at Vision in front of 1,000 industry giants.
At least it was probably 100 in there.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
and there were some heavy hitter trainers there too, so it was.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah,
that was intense. But
I was nervous.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I want to tell you, Chris nailed it though.
Chris was awesome.
I think they are all really great. I mean, really, no BS. I think they're all really great. Bryn was up there. You could tell with his cadence, he was nervous. His hand was shaking with the presenter, or the laser pointer. And
I was cold, man. Didn't you hear me? I told you that.
Yeah, but I thought that might have made it even more endearing. And I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been in a classroom with that kind of energy before. You know what I mean? Like there's a really good, positive, engaged energy with it.
Yeah, I agree.
And don't get me wrong, that's a credit to the attendees there, but it's a real credit to you guys for having engaging ideas, engaging presentations. They really were.
I think all of the presentations were very just different, and they weren't just somebody coming up talking about a car they fixed. They had a point that they were trying to make, except for my last one. I totally forgot to make my point.
You were a little under the gun for time. But there was enough time for you to do that. It was, but I think everybody was under the impression when it hit, what was it, 5:15? They were done. You could tell they were ready to go.
No, I thought it's a really good idea. I think, we joke about Rich and Keith being older, but ultimately it's not only about age and experience. We're talking about vision. I mean, yes, in your mind, originally you were thinking about getting new instructors out in the field, but I think probably a lot of it was getting more new blood at vision, So
absolutely. And that's something I was going to add to that. Oh, it was kind of a game time decision too about, do you get up there and present it, as a, quote unquote MC, serious and straight laced, or do you, not saying I was good at it, but try to lighten the mood a little bit? And
it worked perfectly.
Yeah, it'll work great.
And Chris Chesney is in the back, and I kind of like cornered him. I say, I just really want your opinion on this. Please don't, I'm serious about this question. What do you think? Straight up or lighthearted? He said, just go be yourself. So that means sarcastic and lighthearted. And it accidentally worked really well. I think it.
I agree. I think the entire session was just, you're right. The energy felt great. Obviously I was nervous, there was some very important to me people in the room, including my peers that were presenting with me and you. So it was definitely,
up there spreading the coronavirus with your high fives. Whole front row is probably all sick.
So I wasn't there. I didn't get to see it yet. It is recorded, so I will get to watch it. But I have a personal rule. I don't do a case study unless it's a car that I got beat by. Do you see that as a hindrance or as a positive thing when it comes to presenting in front of a lot of people?
I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, I like both ways.
Yeah.
Brian's presentation was not a vehicle he got beat by.
No,
right.
It was
a really neat, different way of going about gathering some information that's really fast and can take you in a direction. But I also like Bryn's, where This thing kind of took me for a ride, and it makes a lot of people in the those in attendance. Sometimes you go to enough classes and it's always like the presenter or whoever built the case study is just, they always got it covered, they always got it handled.
Right.
Or you
Look
think
how
they're
smart
just
I am.
lying to you, right? That
Yeah.
this car destroyed me, but I'm going to just show you the good stuff that makes me look really smart.
I only
he's
learned
saying
from
that.
the ones that beat me, so that's why I use those as a case study, because it's the ones that I missed the basic. It's always a basic. Every time I spent 3 hours today on a Nissan to find out it was missing a power to the PCM.
Yeah.
Like
That's how it works, right?
Yeah, it's always it's a simple problem that just beat me up all day long because I skipped part of my process, it's usually I skipped part of my process. I didn't follow a good process of diagnosis.
Yeah, or me, it's an assumption.
Right,
I was gonna
I
right.
say
see a
that.
piece of data and it just, I'm going this way, and
But that's
now you're
actually
down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
that point you have, Perkins, is actually, that's a good point. Actually, the case study Chris is going to talk about is actually one that beat us, and it was exactly what you said. It was just something stupid. We
Right.
looked at
I've
it,
never
we
been
looked
beat
over
by
it. Yeah,
one that was something that was super complicated.
it's always something stupid.
I mean, the last time before this I got butt kicked was door locks on an Odyssey that wouldn't work that I spent a couple hours on to determine that the power going to the fuse box for them from a different fuse box, the fuse was in the wrong spot. That's how it,
And nobody knows how it got there.
Right. Yeah. No, nobody knows it. But I assumed.
I can't tell you how many times that happens in what I do. The fuses are just not there or missing, and the car's been working for years and nobody knows. It's insane.
I checked
The
all the
opposite-
fuses. They're all good. I didn't check
the
if they're in the right
opposite-
spot, but they're all good.
The opposite's true too. Like you get those ones that are like badass case studies, and you're like, you surprise yourself. Damn, that was badass on that one, And then the other ones kick your ass. But can we maybe? First off, I want to say that Brandon Steckler with Motor Age recorded most of course, this
All
session.
All but mine.
and
At
my
least most
second
of
one,
mine.
which is fine. But so I think that Sherry with Milwaukee, anyways, may be an point. I think Chris, everybody's had their hands on this. Chris Groff did some editing on it, and then Brian worked on it as well a little bit. So I believe that Sherry's plan is to maybe it'll we'll be able to put it out there, but hopefully
We're pending her approval or direction on what to do with it. So
There's a small 5-second window that needs to be cut out of that video.
I already did.
Oh, we got that good.
Okay.
But
I zoomed
what do
in.
you guys think of telling them briefly, what the point of each of our presentations was?
Sure.
Falco was just scope bashing, so
I was wondering when that would come in.
While he is limping up to the podium to talk, with his cane and his breather.
I'm just the old fogey. You can't accept the new technology.
Yeah.
Then I introduced you as like the youngest on the panel.
Yes,
It's been a
you
flat
did.
rate.
It's putting up with these guys. It's aged me.
I was thinking of saying Falco's like 29 years old actually. But,
He's been in the business 4 years. He's ready to go.
29 times what?
Oh, not there yet.
Well, Keith Williamson's was first, and he owns a shop in the Midwest. They do a lot of hybrid work apparently,
Mhm.
and
And that's fairly new for him too.
Yeah, I think it's in Iowa. And
okay. He, I think it's the first time he's presented.
It was, yeah.
As far
if
as I
remember
know,
correctly. Yeah.
He claimed during Pete Meyer's interview that speaking in public wasn't a big deal for him. I kind of
Yeah,
want to
he-
kick him in the teeth.
He said on a panel. He said on a panel at Vision 1 year.
He seemed to be the least nervous one there, I think.
Yeah, he was on like a Saturday. No, he was on a panel with Carm, I think, at Vision once.
Okay. Well, his presentation was it was good. He had a case study on auxiliary coolant pump for the power electronics that had failed and caused I think it
Overheat.
caused some component failure, overheating in the power inverter.
Yeah.
I guess another shot before him quoted $8,000 or something crazy, and of course he gets it knocked out of the park. But the main point that he wanted to make is that, there's a lot of hybrid and EVs on the road now, and sure there's shops that have taken on that challenge and gotten into that market and do that work, but there's still a lot of shops that are kind of afraid to get into it. And he's just wanting to make sure that people understood that there's really nothing to be afraid of, and the cars aren't going away, which I thought was cool. And then Justin Morgan was next. Anybody want to talk about Justin's, Matt, since it was your
Just screw up.
It was really just a bash Matt. That's really all it was. Make everybody well aware of how incompetent I really am.
I thought we all knew.
If you didn't, you should.
If you don't know, now you know. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Well, he had a BMW issue that had a lot of parts tossed at it to fix what seemed like a non-related system, and it ended up being ultimately a fairly easy fix that would have required very little money.
Technician induced, probably off fault.
I think fundamentally, yeah. When
the valve cover was replaced. Yeah, when the valve cover was replaced, it was missing a ground.
Torque to yield bolt. Stretched.
Wouldn't drive down all the way and clamp down that ground.
Yeah. Torque to yield is it's there for a reason.
So this is a BMW with a drivability issue.
If I remember right, it was an N52.
Sometimes we wouldn't start, I guess, but Justin Morgan does remote diag support for LMV for BMW.
LMV Bavarian, yep.
So he got a call, and he was tasked with trying to help diagnose this car over the phone, which he killed it. But drivability issue, and his main point was, and he called out Jim Morton, beating up Jim Morton for the second time during this session, because Matt told him he was older than dirt, I think.
Well, and I didn't actually say it. I just hinted about
you just pointed directly at his face.
Aging educator base, and then I just kind of pointed to him.
Stared at him.
And then that kind of set the tone for the rest of the session.
Well, Jim teaches to get in the funnel as quick as possible. Justin's point, he called Jim out on. Of course, Jim has some good points with that, making sure that you get in the right funnel as quick as possible. Justin's point was that, like Matt was saying, that you have to look at the vehicle as a total system. Make sure you're not ruling anything out, because, if you do, then you're potentially missing the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was noise on a bit serial data, and that he could link it up to ignition coil.
Ignition noise, yep.
Yeah.
That's a better, ignition noise that had a specific coil, and then before popping the coil and checking power feed and ground, realizing he had a ground issue.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really cool case study. A great point. And then Richard comes in and tells us how much we don't need scopes.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
So we can
Don't get me in more trouble than I already am.
Get to Bryn.
I did tell Matt that you were backpedaling when you were up there. Look at this guy backpedaling.
Well, I encouraged proper scan tool use. Just trying to make the point that there's a lot of information out there that I think, and I know because I see it, guys miss obvious stuff and maybe not even knowing to look for the not so obvious stuff, that there might be some valuable data that's worth.
It was really good, but didn't Bryn go before you?
Well,
I think he did. Yeah.
Because you started us off after break.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I got. So it was Bryn next. Yeah.
Bryn, you were talking about basically how you did a diagnostic, and you got it. Your process got you there, but it was, what could you have done to get there faster and more efficiently?
Yeah, I really like that part of in hindsight, looking back and saying, all right, I know what's wrong. What did I miss? I thought that was great.
And basically analyzing your case studies so that you can be more efficient the next time around. So, yeah, that's it.
Didn't we skip over Chris?
No, he was
Chris
after.
Was he after me?
Yeah, I was after Rich.
Oh, okay.
No, all joking aside, Rich, I liked your presentation a lot. I agree with you 100%, myself included. we were talking about the scan data. I think you feel like you were talking about me, scan data, and
No,
seeing
would I do that?
seeing the pit and not making sense of it, and just whatever. I don't know what that is, and not paying attention.
I think that was a shot at Chris, actually.
Yeah. He said those exact words like the day before.
Yeah.
Well, it made me when you said that, I went, crap, because Chris always has a good way of proving me wrong or making me think another way. And I went, crap, is he right? And I thought, well, and then I made that point. I was like, if you hooked up your scope and got a bad waveform, you wouldn't just go, well, that was a waste of time, let me move on. You would go, wait, I need to do some research. I need to look at how I hooked this up. I need to look at my setup. Why isn't my waveform what it's supposed to be? And we should probably be doing that with scan data. That was my point. Is if you're going to reach for your scan tool more than any other tool out there, then we should know how to use it and use as much of it as possible.
Absolutely.
Or just page through the PIDs.
Hey, is that the
At least
North Carolina guy?
Yeah, we got a North Carolina native down here.
Yep.
He's already got barbecue with vinegar in it
And coleslaw.
and coleslaw.
All the coleslaw he wants.
That's right. Finally.
Keith is a coleslaw fan. Good coleslaw.
All right, so
Good the opportunity to be on a show with fans love.
What up, Keith?
Oh, the heck
A
with
really
us.
low bar you have set there for yourself.
We had to pay to get him on here, so.
all right,
So then
we
Chris
have a
went.
Chris, yeah, we need to talk about Chris because I think he had one of the best one. And no offense to anybody else, but I just feel like what he was talking about with service information is
All
at
offense
the
taken.
heart of everything we talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one, however Matt and everybody laid everything out really worked perfectly. Like every topic seemed to flow really, really well into the next one, each one supporting the next. Mine's just something I developed because I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't think I've ever said no to anything, ever, which is terrible, terrible thing. But the one thing that's
Don't
got
get
me
me
through
started.
all of it, oh yeah, one thing that's gotten me through all of it is service info. If I could get a service manual for it, I'd take it on. And dealing with everything, I mean, I've gone after steam engines. I worked on HVAC equipment, ice cream machines, cars, trucks, tractors. It's all the same. It's like Jim, Brandon, everybody else says. 85% happens on everything. 15% is how you do it. And the rest is getting through the garbage service info to really figure out what you need to know. I mean, you can sit there on a lot of this stuff and spend 20, 30 minutes trying to learn some system, or you can kind of cut through with some of the techniques I had and ones I'd learned and just kind of, yep, nope, throw that out, throw that out, throw that out. That's got to be wrong if this is right. And you find pretty quickly, especially once you do a few cars, that 5-10 minutes, you got everything you need to know, including Richard's scan data list and meetings behind a lot of those data pages you might have thrown out before.
Absolutely.
Hey, Chris, you called me this morning. What was that about?
Oh yeah, GM Saturn, but GM bad service info on a relearn procedure, service fast adaptations on a Saturn Outlook. I don't know, Saturn
Saturn Sky?
Oxo. Same difference. One of them with the 6T70 transmission, whatever. I'm looking around for this service relearn that it just doesn't have. In that case, even delving through the service info, everything matched up, and sometimes you still lose, and you got to reach out to somebody who knows.
What were you trying to relearn?
Came in for a PCM or a TCM reprogram, did that, and then service info said, after this, perform service fast adaptations. All I had was a regular trans adaptations, so I did that, and I'm looking around for this other process. Doesn't have it. Slightly different. One's just your trans adaptations. The other one's similar to, I just did a Chrysler the other day with it. You put in drive, kicks it up against the converter, reverse, all that. So.
Hey, if I can ask Perkins, I notice you don't have your co-pilot with you. Is that because of social distancing?
Someone's got to watch these crazy kids.
Oh, he's in the bunker, man. He's
That's
ready
why he's
for
in his bunker. He's in his back.
he's ready for stuff to go down, man.
Where's your Batmobile?
Really, what happened is I left the Tech Talk session just feeling terrible about myself, and that I didn't know how to use scan data and service information to fix cars.
Brian, what was yours on, Brian? Let's go
Mine?
talk about you. Yeah.
Mine was a way to look at the health report, if you will, of coil over plug ignition systems and how to get that without spending a lot of time using just one wire, sampling one wire. It went well. I was very nervous, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. That was my first time talking in front of a huge crowd, and especially the crowd that we had. It wasn't just regular people. This was a lot of industry giants out there. It was intimidating, but I thought I did all right for my first time.
And you owned it.
Yeah.
No, the testing technique, I don't think you're doing it justice talking about it right now. I think it was brilliant. It's talking about efficiency. The amount of things that you can cover with one simple, like 3-minute scope setup test was pretty awesome. I thought it was an awesome presentation.
And that was the point of it, to not have to, worry about doing all those other ways, with the low amp probe and all that. All that stuff is very powerful, but sometimes that takes some time. But there's ways around it sometimes to do this. That's what I went over. I thought it was a good thing to cover, and I thought it went over well.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I was blown away by that. I had never even thought about doing it that way. I've done similar stuff, but I mean, that was one of the coolest, and I wish Brandon, between shaky cam and not needing spare batteries, would have gotten that.
I wish I would have known, because I had a battery backup in my.
Where's your arm, dude? Whoa.
Yeah. I was literally in the room with Brandon with the whole backpack, like 18 memory cards, 3 batteries, tripod, the whole 9 yards, and Brandon's like, I got this. I'm like, yeah,
sure. That's all right. Next year. Next year we'll get it.
If we wanted to get into it, because I know we're running late, I would really love to get into that case study that Chris did.
Yes.
I'd really love to get into that,
absolutely.
Late before people leave.
If he's ready,
Yes.
I'm ready.
Chris, you ready?
Yeah, I got it pulled up here, and then I just got to hit this screen share button, right?
Screen share.
Yes.
Make sure to take off the porn or minimize it. In fact,
that's awkward then.
And that picture I sent you earlier.
oh, I got that picture too, Brian. No, keep that up.
All right, here. Let's see. Oh, look at that. I got options of what I can share. Nice. All right, and Martino, feel free to hop in here, because it's been a while, and we did miss out on a lot of it.
Well, that's actually part of the point, and actually, we've been sitting on this for so long, some people don't even live in the same state anymore. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right, you can go get started. Well, what I find this is applicable about, because when we get into this, it goes into like what you were talking about with your service information and what Richard was talking about. So let's get into it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
First off, can I say that how this play date came about? I mean, I think there's somebody that was as a transplant now that had something to do with this.
Yeah, Keith, how did we get to this car?
So we did a little Super Sunday type meetup. It was just one of those ideas to see if we could get everyone together or have a little bit of fun, and we get to see each other's approach on a vehicle, which I thought was a lot of fun to begin with. And then it turned into something really interesting, and watching everybody, and how they worked together and how they transferred their ideas from one to the other and their testing techniques. And we made a short little video clip on it, but I mean, that was a great day in my opinion.
It was a great day.
They were all there. Obviously Chris was there as well.
And there was an Audi you wouldn't let me touch.
Yeah, no. I put everybody outside their own element, which I thought was fun, everybody likes certain cars, so we made them work on the other ones.
Who was it Jason Chavez? Who was
Chavez came down, yeah. He came down, and he was the person who won the. Mike Nicholson had sent him down I want to say pressure transducer, but okay, pressure transducer, and that was a really cool thing.
he also won the scholarship to like TST or something? I mean, didn't Mike give him a
Yeah, he paid his way to Super Saturday.
Super Saturday?
Super
Okay.
Saturday, that's
Yeah.
what it was,
Yep.
yes, okay. Yep.
Oh, Chavez?
He worked he was hanging out the entire day, and went the entire day. Then we surprised him with that and kind of blew his mind. It was great.
So he was in my
Adam-
J-Box class at Super Saturday, and he won a Cardac 3.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that whole day was awesome on multiple different levels, but I think that was probably, I'll say, the coolest out of the whole day was just seeing Jason's face when the announcement was made. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who really wants to learn. He's one of them. He definitely deserved it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Great,
All right.
great dude. So let's get going. What do we got here?
All right, so we had this 08 Nissan Armada 5.6, and it was an intermittent crank no start. And typical Keith's little hint for this was it made a magical sound that nobody else could hear when
But
it would
him.
start or not start. If you remember that part of it. But
I love magical sounds.
Yeah.
but it was yes, I mean sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't. I believe a couple of us took a look at it the night before, but Chris and I delved into it Sunday morning. And I mean, it was an auction car, if I remember right, Keith. Something
so
like
it was
that.
an auction car that somebody had purchased and had it only for about 2 months, and maybe put less than 100 miles on.
Yeah.
So they had no real history on the vehicle either.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it was a fairly consistent crank no start by the time we got to it. Would take multiple key switch cycles to get it to run, and it would run well, no misfires, no check engine light from what I remember. Doesn't stall, hesitate. I mean, once it's running, it's good. So we kind of went through and got our baselines, looked at some scan data, all that.
But there's a cool thing that it did that it kept on beeping at us when you're standing in front of the car.
Was getting ready to delve into that. Yeah.
Yeah, keep on going. Yeah,
So-
my bad.
No, you're good. There's going to be stuff I'm going to forget here. But like Chris was saying, yeah, the one thing, which hindsight's 2020, was looking back at the fact that when it wouldn't start, you'd get a beep, 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 beep. And what did each one of us do? We're like, that's annoying. Hit the front parking sonar button to shut it off and continued on with what we were doing, which is a big indication of what was wrong with this car.
Mhm.
So we confirmed the problem. We had a good cranking cadence, no unusual noises. I mean, no visible signs of any kind of tampering or anything other than what had been looked at the day before. No obvious signs of water damage or anything. No fault codes present. We did have that U1000 code that just showed up and disappeared. It would show up whether it would run or not. So we kind of ignored that. We did spark. Mass airflow was reading properly. We had fuel injector control, which was the interesting part and kind of led us down the rabbit hole for a little bit. So when it wouldn't start, we would have one random injector fired for every 300 or for every 360 degrees of the engine or so, one full rotation. And it would be, one time it might be cylinder 1, then it might be cylinder 4. And then when we would sit there and it would actually run, obviously it would fire all of them. So we knew we were looking to figure out what was controlling the fuel timing and injection control. So we went through and we actually, if I remember right, Chris, I think fairly early on, not only did we have the schematic, but we did have our input-output chart out there, didn't we?
Yeah. What we did is we both did this. We both did the same thing. Actually, even the night before, I think Corey was looking at this car as well. Corey SMA, and we all did the same thing. Keith was standing back with his arms crossed, kind of smiling and smirking at us because we all did the same thing. And what we did is we looked at the data list. of just looking for stuff that didn't make sense. And what we saw is everything made sense. The car should start. There were a couple of things that did make sense, but we realized we were looking at a snap-on scan tool, and a lot of the times, a lot of the PIDs there, if they don't make sense, maybe they're wrong, right?
Was
So
it
Sure.
variable valve timing stuff?
Well, we're going to get into that,
Okay.
Yeah.
but because that was one of the things we were concerned about, right? If the timing was off, the injectors are going to fire all stupid, right?
They were just blowing this completely out of proportion. It was easy peasy. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we went through. We knew we had a fueling control fault. We knew whatever was controlling fuel injection timing was where we needed to go. So we pulled up this. Nissan's actually got a fairly well laid out. I say fairly well. It gets confusing later. Input/output signal chart.
Well, I actually
mean,
want to stop.
super
I
helpful.
want to stop right there in
Yeah.
the chat. Somebody was mentioning that it's a security problem, which is one of the things we thought about in the data list.
Mhm.
The car was allowed to start, so
Yes.
we kicked security and anti-theft right out the bat. So, so who asked that question? Glenn Pinkham mentioned security problem, but yeah, Glenn, we had that kind of narrowed out right away because that's one of the things we thought about. All right, go on.
Yeah, so we went through and we've got obviously cam and crank sensor, mass airflow, ECT. I mean, all your usual suspects. I don't have a pointer here, but
Hey, dude. Yeah, we can see it.
okay, right here. Park new.
Yeah, don't click it.
Come on now. Yeah. Getting ahead of
There you go.
ourselves. Park neutral switch. We had cranking, right? So that's all good, obviously. Or so we think. Knock sensor, battery. I mean, this thing was cranking all day. We did throw a charger on it, but battery was good. And then you get into some of the other stuff, and this is kind of what I was talking about in my talk, is you're reading through, okay, knock sensor. Well, knock sensor's not going to turn a fuel injector off when you're cranking. Power steering pressure sensor, same thing. Oxygen sensor, it's got to be running. So, you know, right off the bat, we're kind of throwing some of this stuff out of here. You know, our air fuel ratio, or don't care about any of that. That's not going to prevent it from firing injectors during cranking. That's all after it runs. So we had a couple ideas, and first thing we went for, even though it cranked fairly good and ran well, we wanted to check our cam and crank, see what was going on there. Unfortunately, we'll get to that in a second, but we went through and, like I said, we did all that. We wanted cam and crank, and we wanted to start picking out data PIDs that we could do. So we had already done mass airflow. We had already done temperature sensor plausibility, TPS and APP signals and sweeps. Chris and I were kind of bouncing around. A few other people were bouncing around. That was done at one point just to confirm. Battery voltage, like I said, was good. For park neutral switch, which we had a data PID. Chris, you might be able to remember it better.
Yeah, that data PID, because we were using a snap-on tool. We noticed in the dash that the dash recognized all of the gears. All right, but the switch didn't. So we passed that off as okay. The scan tool is just not reading right, but the dash is reading right. It has to be okay. And we moved on from there.
Yep. Yeah, so we were all good there, cranking confirmed ignition inputs via our data PIDs. So then we went to our cam and crank correlation, where I got a crash course in the ATS scope. Unfortunately, just from bouncing around and all, I don't think we ever did get a saved capture of that. But
I wasn't able to save one. We were doing it. We were messing with that all day long, and just when we didn't know we were making a case study. We were just there to fix a car.
Yeah,
that's how it was. So
But,
I don't
I
think
mean,
we saved anything.
no,
That's
no.
what we let them
Thankfully,
think.
yes. Nissan does have a known good cam crank correlation scope pattern right there in service info, and it matched up. Chris, I'll let you go off a little bit on our cam signal.
So
flipping, 'cause
this is where we went down the rabbit hole. So using the ATS is great with the dual time base. All right. So what we did is we did the cam and crank. This car only has one cam sensor for a V8, which is weird, but whatever, because Nissan. So this car has one cam sensor, one crank sensor. We hooked up to it in one time base, and then we hooked it up We also put it on a separate time base so we could watch a short time base and a long time base. And we noticed while the car was cranking, the cam sensor was inverted. Now that's a bone of contention between a lot of people. A lot of people say Nissans do that. That's just what they do. And then there's other people that say that's actually a symptom. But what we did notice is when the car started, and we had to do it a couple times, while cranking, the car finally decided to start. As soon as the car started, the pattern inverted and went the right way. So we went crazy. We spent hours trying to figure that out. We tried to disconnect the crank sensor. We tried disconnecting the cam sensor. We tried checking our wiring. Was there a new one in there? A new sensor, new crank sensor in the car? I think there was a new crank sensor in the car.
New crank sensor, yeah.
Yeah. We checked it. I mean, we checked everything going through we read service information. It was insane. We spent hours trying to figure this out. We realized that there's phase sensors and cam sensors in this car. We checked everything to try to figure this out. All right, Chris, you can go on now. Yeah, you take it over.
We were trying all sorts of different default strategies. Hey, let's remove the crank, let's remove the cam, see what happens. And because of the intermittent nature of it and a bunch of us bouncing around and having fun with it, it was kind of funny. You know, what was it? I think the one time we disconnected the crank sensor and the thing fired up immediately after.
Yeah, and we thought, okay, that's got to be the problem.
Yeah. So we went down that rabbit hole, and finally we were sitting there. I think we had some of that good New York pizza that kind of knocked some sense back into us, and we're like, let's go back. And you, Chris, you started going through the schematic itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And line by line by line of that schematic.
Yeah, we were scoping all of the data, all of the lines for the computer. We decided, okay, let's check all of the inputs and outputs. We don't care what the scan tool says. Let's see what the voltage is coming out of all these inputs and outputs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we already covered this, inverted, all different. We tried crank unplugged, NAF unplugged, cam unplugged, cam phasers unplugged. And from there, did we fully understand the system? We thought we did, but we didn't. So once again, same chart. And we're going to go through here. We're going to try to reverse engineer it.
Go back, go back again. Go back on that last slide. I can't circle. Under do we fully understand the system operation? Have we made improper assumptions? That's huge. That's why we wanted to physically test everything one by one. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Schematic correct, the service information lacking. And yes and no in this case. We did make improper assumptions. Schematic, actually, OE schematic in this even ended up being incorrect. We're going to get into that, though. So we started going through, and like Chris said, line by line by line. I mean, we had already tested the living hell out of the cam and crank sensors. I mean, we knew that was good every which way from Sunday. Yeah. Powers and grounds, loaded checks there. And we started going through, and we came back to that bad data PID, or what we thought was a bad data PID in the Snap-on scanner, which was, I forget the exact phrasing on it, but it was one of the torque neutral inputs that we had ignored because it didn't change at all whether that car is started or stopped. Something Keith had brought up, and I've done it before as well, is take it when it's known good, save all your data PIDs, take it when it's known bad, save all your data PIDs, see what changes.
And I want to stop. I want to stop right here, because we talked about this in the beginning of how in case studies we only show how awesome we are at the end. I'm going to roll back the curtain and tell you, we threw a PCM at this vehicle.
That was my misdiagnosis, by the way.
Yes, but we went to the same spot. Yeah. Yep. So that's what Keith kind of half diagnosed it the night before. Came to the conclusion it was a PCM, then gave it to us. We came to the same conclusion after we thought we exhausted every single test that we could do. We threw a PCM at this car. All right, Chris.
Yeah. We threw it at. Yeah, I was thinking we threw the PCM after we got to this point, but we threw the PCM before we ate lunch there. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Programmed it in. Did it start up the first time right away, or we didn't even get that lucky? Okay.
No, I think it started the first time, but not after that.
That might have been. I feel like there was a false sense of hope there, and then it
Yeah.
came crashing down pretty fast.
Hmm. Yeah, and you get
But,
that sticks feeling in your stomach. Oh
Yeah,
crap!
the pizza didn't sit so well after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Almost
did
like
have it.
Chicago pizza. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, so I mean, that was the only input that we kept coming back
I'm
to.
gonna call your wife, bro.
And vehicle, it did crank every time. Transmission and cluster PIDs did agree. Everything was saying to us that that transmission was in park or neutral. I mean, what car is going to let you crank if it's not in park or neutral?
Hmm.
And our ECM input output chart specifically called out that park neutral position switch, but the data PID in the ECM didn't change. So this is kind of where we decided to get into how it gets it. And this came up with a couple different things. This I actually found after the fact. I mean, how we found it at the time was Chris and I literally went through line by line by line, and he found a analog, I'll call it, neutral input into that ECM. And if I remember right, what was it, about 8.5, 9 volts we were getting on the wire?
Yeah, when it was not acting right.
That's right.
It was supposed to be 12 or 0.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just to, before I get a little into this more, we literally went through, we found a analog neutral input into this ECM, and we knew it was supposed to be either 12 volts or 0 volts.
Now you're looking at a wiring diagram at this point, and trying to familiarize yourself with the physical circuits coming into the ECM.
We're looking at the inputs and outputs, and comparing those to a factory wiring diagram and then an aftermarket wiring diagram, and going pin to pin to where those inputs and outputs would actually be.
And just physically testing them, seeing what they're doing.
Physically testing them with a scope, and loading the powers and grounds where need to be.
Yep. And so at that point, we had, we'll call it 9 volts. And against Chris's better judgment, although I did use a test light, I did what I always do. And I'm like, I'm either going to ground it or I'm going to shoot power to it. And we grounded it, thing fired off right away. And so at that point, we knew we had a bad neutral input to that ECM.
What also happened when you grounded it?
Oh, the parking. So, well, at that point, I guess, I don't even remember if we had hit the switch again, but the parking sonar went off. And the data PID changed in our snap-on scanner there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was off as in no longer sounding off, by the way.
Yeah, the annoying beep was not happening anymore when you turned the key on.
Mm-hmm. And so it was, we were sitting there and, okay, neutral input. And at that point, I think that was about the end of the day. So we kind of left it sit there that we were getting a bad input to the ECM, and it was coming from the instrument cluster.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so what we decided, I don't know if you have any more slides on this, is
this is kind of everything after this backs up to explain it from the back again.
Yeah, because what we figured out is the actual display on the dash is coming through CAN bus through the transmission, but this park neutral input is coming from the cluster to the ECM. And so the car was thinking it was in gear when you're starting it, which is why it didn't want to let the injection pulse and the spark happen, right?
Correct.
That's how it's stopping you from starting the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no. Because this, pretty much everything after this is what I went backwards to kind of prove this out and to make it make sense. So we were looking in the ECM. That's where all our data PIDs were. That's what we were concerned with. And yet we had no good, until we grounded that wire, we did not have a good park neutral switch in the ECM. Yet the cluster showed a good park neutral, and transmission itself was showing a good park neutral when we went into transmission. So I ended up going back through, and this slide here is actually a whole list of where all these data, where it's being sent to, who transmits, who receives, all that. So I got a couple things highlighted. And honestly, for the life of me, I do not remember what ADP stands for on Nissan. But see, we have our
just to say, when you see that chart and you're not working your way backwards, that chart
Mhm.
is very misleading at first, and it's something that you'll look at and just skip right over.
Oh, yeah.
Because that means you see it, you look at it, you say, okay, yes, all right, I see what these inputs are, I know what it's supposed to be there. Yes, okay, it goes up to the cluster, but the
Mhm.
cluster is giving an indication of Prindle. So why would the
Oh,
cluster
yeah.
do that?
Exactly, and we're kind of taught as diagnosticians, to not call a problem on one finger pointing on it. You want to get multiple fingers. So when you get something that's not making sense, like a park neutral input that doesn't make sense, it's not moving, but your cluster shows fine. And then you go into the transmission, and transmission moves. You
Mhm.
think, okay, piece of garbage, snap-on tool. It's not showing me the right thing. Move on.
Right. And even working back, knowing what we knew made the car run, this chart still gets confusing because if we're looking here, so we look at our position indicator lamp signal, transmits from the TCM, which we know we had a good signal at.
Mm-hmm.
Current gear position signal transmits from the TCM. Once again, we knew it was good there. Park range signal, once again, transmits from the TCM. But if you notice here how I've got it highlighted,
Mm-hmm.
ECM doesn't receive it. ECM doesn't receive that signal. So we go over and shoot all the way down here, and we have a first position switch signal and a fourth position switch signal. So that comes from the that's the instrument cluster there, transmits it, and this is all just CAN bus at this point, and TCM receives it. So this, once I delved a little further into service information, it's also known as the park neutral switch at the shifter. So you got a park neutral in the transmission itself and one at the shifter assembly. But once again, this is all CAN bus communication, and we're still looking for how it's getting that analog input. So we do know the instrument cluster here transmits that to the TCM. So we kind of went backwards and we're looking at the instrument cluster to see if it how else it sends it. So right here, PNP that we're concerned with is not being transmitted over the comms network. Where does it get it? So right here, this is OE schematic. Instrument cluster here, pin 40 to pin 102 on the ECM. This is our direct neutral input that was sticking up around 9 volts, and then when you ground it, you get it to crank over. So we already went through that. And right here, another piece of service information that I wasn't even aware Nissan had was basically a chart telling us each individual pin, conditions, data, voltage. Absolutely awesome. Diagnostic pinout chart is what they call it. Grounded it with the test light, removed test light, blah, blah, blah. So we got that. Where it gets confusing is, okay, we're at the fact that point, instrument cluster is not capable of fully grounding the wire. And from everything we can see, aftermarket NOE schematics, I mean, and this is kind of something I was bouncing back and forth with Keith after the fact. Everything we could see, that's the only wire going in there. No fault codes, no nothing. So we were leaning pretty heavily towards being a bad cluster on this at this point. And yet, bouncing through service information, never once tells you that that neutral input also goes down to the sonar control unit. So at that point, so we now have two modules that share this wire, which complicates it. Is it the sonar module that's not acting properly, or was it the instrument cluster? It was, in this case, it was the instrument cluster, if I remember correctly, Keith, right?
Yes.
I think yeah.
Sorry.
But basically, so right off the bat, even using OE service information, working backwards through this, took me a good 20 minutes to find the fact that this wire is shared out of the instrument cluster and branches off one to the ECM and one down to the sonar unit. And like we said before, that was something we completely ignored right off the bat and didn't understand the system well enough. That would have, I mean, honestly, if I ran into that again, what do you say, Chris? 5-10 minute fix?
Yeah, once I remember it, but yeah. And
Yeah.
and what sucks is I probably make the same mistake again.
Yeah. And so it was like I was sitting there struggling to try to understand, number one, why do you need 2 transmission neutral switches, and 2, what in the heck is actually going on with everything?
Because
So
Nissan.
I sat down. Yeah. I sat there and kind of drew everything out here of how we're doing it. So we've got basically
There were
TCM.
many phone calls after that day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we got our transmission internal park neutral position switch, goes direct to the TCM. That controls our ability to crank. So the TCM gets that. It sends its neutral signal over CAN bus to the instrument cluster itself, to the ADP. Cool. So when we were seeing all those good data PIDs, we're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Then we have our shifter assembly park neutral switch, which is a direct analog into the cluster at that point. That park neutral switch signal then shoots over on a gray-red wire to the ECM and to the sonar unit. So it was needlessly complicated in this case for what should be a basic crank no start, which complicated, misleading service information, misleading schematics. I mean, at this point, because Keith was actually a little concerned about calling the $800 cluster or something on it and making sure there was nothing else on there. Theoretically, we could have had a failed sonar unit that was also causing the same problem. So it was just a lot of different goofy stuff all at once. A lot of us said that's a data PID we don't care about, and really not delving through service information as well as we should have.
And this car, Rich, is exactly why I brought up to you that scan tools lie, but it leads you down to the wrong hole, because that's what we're used to is our scan tools lying to us. Can you trust what your scan tool is saying? If you have the luxury, pull out a different scan tool and see if it lies, or is it just faulty information? So it gets kind of rough.
What's really interesting on this one is, like I said earlier, that data PID did not change on the scanner, whether it started or not started, until we fully grounded that. So there's also a threshold within that ECM. I mean, basically that ECM saw some kind of voltage threshold between when it would fire the injectors and when it wouldn't, but that threshold wasn't enough to tell the software to flip a data PID. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's a whole nother variable there for goofy intermittent problems.
Yeah, in this case, it would have had to be a product knowledge kind of scenario. I think knowing exactly what that data PID should say, which is, for most of us working in the aftermarket, it's hard to make sure. It's hard to know it all.
Which is why we use scopes.
But is there somewhere that tells us what that PID should mean and what it should say?
It was there, but it took us forever to find it. I mean, Nissan is horrible with their service information. But it was there. We did find it.
It was there. It was not heck. I didn't know they had half of the list they had, like diagnostic pinout chart. I was still working on tractors at that point. I had no idea of Nissan information to that level at all. So it's like I was saying in my talk, like a lot of people said, between knowing scan tool information, knowing what you can find, and knowing your service information. Yeah, and it does. I mean, we just made a big, long, drawn-out thing out of a bad park neutral input. I mean, you want to talk about the relatively simple ones that kick your butt, and one you can learn from, but you won't necessarily see one like that in a regular class. How many people want to sit there and say they spent, what we spend, 5 hours on that, Chris, about?
It was a good portion of the day.
Yeah. Yeah,
but it felt great.
Park neutral.
And it would have been great to actually save the captures, and because this would have actually been a great article in a magazine. But the fact that we didn't actually have the captures, and that's why we've been sitting on it for the longest time, because there's really no way to present this, because If people really want to see all the before and after, we just didn't have it because we were just like two mechanics just trying to fix a problem. Not one time thinking to stop and save the day.
Just reminded me too. We even went to a guy who was a really sharp Nissan tech, Hakeem, who has his own channel out there on YouTube as well. And we even went to him and said, hey, we're trying to locate some extra service info here, and we're not seeing where this actually goes. And that was even he had a hard time struggling to find that info. I actually wrote a class and taught a class for Nissan on trying to find their service info just for their techs, which was a mission in itself, just to try to get it to where I could show them how they can find certain things. And it went over really well. Just that there's just so much to it that you go from one car to the next, and that chart that you're looking for just doesn't exist on the next car.
Because Nissan.
Yeah, because Nissan.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
I just want to say, I just want to say, Keith, your truck is looking really roomy right there.
Yeah, it really was.
It's really roomy service truck you got right there, Keith.
Yes, sir. Well, there is a hint behind all that, but I mean, I don't know how much hint I want to give just yet. But there's, other than that, of course, right there. If Tommy calls up my wife again, but and by the way, 3 a.m. Anyway, so yeah, there's a couple.
Well, it's only 2 a.m. for him, so
yeah. Maybe that's why she thinks he lasts long.
Hi, Mr. Fazio. I told you, man. I'll give her back.
Well, that was cool. Thanks, guys, for sharing.
And just real quick follow up to that. That's something Keith had started, I guess, up in Staten Island there, but that's something I think a lot of people should be doing all over the country, all over the world. It doesn't have to be. I mean, we had a good amount of people there. What did we have? 8-10 cars there, Keith?
Yeah, at least 8.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be that big. Even if you only got
1 or 2
or 3 other guys and 1 or 2 cars, spend a Saturday, spend a Sunday, keep 6 feet apart.
Hey, I love telling the story that I'm teaching in Fort Myers, Florida, and this guy I've never met before comes up and introduces himself to me and says, hey, you're pretty sharp. I'd love to get together for a play date. And yeah, and when he says play date, I'm creeped out and I'm backing away. And, that person was Brandon Steckler. I didn't realize at the time what he was saying, but yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Everybody get together, and even if it's just one car,
I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it before.
How many things can we hook up to? What can we see? What can we test? It's you'll learn a lot.
That
So.
problem child infinity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely worthwhile.
Yeah, getting the
Just not-
problem.
Just not with the scope.
Yeah. Hey, I posted a picture last week. I had 2 scopes on one car, so I do use them occasionally.
But
That's
only
actually
when
where I
you
got
have,
tripped up
mine.
on mine today.
Okay, next year I'm going to do the one that's going to be you can throw your voltmeter away.
There you go. That I can support.
What's the resistance on my can circuit? I don't know.
It keeps changing.
And blowing your meter fuse.
Put a bigger fuse in.
Yeah, mine's still messed up. Yeah.
You got a penny in there.
I put a bolt in mine.
Yeah, a bullet.
I think-
Bullet.
I think the last
Scopes.
one.
How many scopes?
Last
did
one
we
I
do?
had was. Keith.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just wondering to myself. I'm trying to think back to that Sunday. How many scopes did we actually have there that day?
We had 2 Picos, an ATS, a Snap-on. Did we have 3 Picos?
More than 2 Picos. I think we had at least 3 Picos.
Yeah, it was a mess of wires. It was a mess of wires and USB cables and back probes, and it was insane. It took longer to pick up than to get everything out.
Yeah, I gave Chris a lot of credit because I kept every time I would mess up with the ATS. I'm like, let's just go to the Pico, and he's like, no.
DeFazio was actually, that was an interview. Whoever could diagnose that car in 30 minutes, he was going to hire and pay $150K a year. You guys failed.
Oh, it was rough.
I need to say that I almost hired Kuba and Chavez on that one because they aced that Subaru.
Yeah.
They went through a Subaru with I just gave it to them as a misfire, but it was actually a bad ECM driver for an injector. But I mean, they rolled right through that about as quickly as anybody else could, and really mostly all done with basic tools, and then only moved to the scope at the very end. But I would say that they were really done with that car within a half hour to 40 minutes tops.
Yeah, it was done. It was so fast they were second guessing themselves that they didn't think they diagnosed it right.
So it didn't need head gaskets?
No.
Well, it did, but that's beside.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, wait, what?
Just did one of those.
Well, cool. It's about an hour and a half in. You guys have anything else?
You guys want to do this? You guys want to do this next week?
We still got 55 people watching. What do you guys want to see?
Well, I'm gonna probably...
I think we should do one once a week until we're no longer quarantined.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yep. Let's do it. Next week, Richard had something spicy for us tonight, but we've run out of time, so you guys will have to catch us next week.
Oh, we're doing a radio tease. Try to get them to come back. We got the okay from Chris Chesney and Randy Briggs to share some little snippets of CTI classes, and I will tell everybody to stay tuned to ctionline.com because we are trying to present some online material, some video material, so that we can continue giving you guys some classes. But yeah, maybe next weekend or next week we'll do another one, and I'll give a little piece of a case study I had a part in developing for one of our air conditioning classes. Hopefully,
you got a quick one to do it right now.
Well, I think
for an hour half in, we'll save it for the next.
I was gonna say I don't know how to do quick ones.
I want it now.
Giggity.
I think Keith Perkins has got one a case study that he personally worked on that is in some CTI classes as well. So next week we'll hear from Keith and Rich on them. I think that'd be good.
Yeah, right. I like that idea.
Same bat channel, same bat time.
You can't say that for copyright reasons. Warner Brothers will sue the hell out of you. Thanks, Bren. Thanks.
I've got plenty of time at night now. I could do a class every night.
Don't we have
that's what she said.
Aren't CTI classes postponed until a certain date? Don't we have a new date now?
At least April 10th.
Right.
Is the word.
April 10th.
That was
we'll go from there. We'll
most
see.
Everybody's got their stuff postponed. And speaking of which, thanks to Brian Mann for giving us a shout out today.
Oh yeah,
appreciate that.
You know, that was a great video he put on today.
That's
it was great to have on.
The other Brian from
Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah, Brian number 15 from Ohio.
I think everybody that was in attendance at his thing was named Brian in the
I think so.
At one point, it was ridiculous.
I have 6 clients named Brian. 6 shops that have Brian as the main guy. I'm like, what?
That was the sexiest I've ever heard you say that again.
One more time, get on it. ASMR.
How many Brian?
Don't let me hang.
I had 6 people named Brian. I've got 6 people named Brian.
Just got hard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right.
Oh, Keith's gonna pass out. He's verklempt.
I'm about.
Can you do the brown note, Keith, before we leave?
We need to thank our special guests for for coming on.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, Richard Falco and Chris Martino.
that Matt guy up there.
Yeah. And then the real important 2 guys that showed up, Chris Groff and Matt Fonslow. But
and Tommy's forehead.
And his recliner. And the weird middle of the wall plug.
I know you're not talking about my basement. At least I got one.
Why is that?
Your basement's the first floor.
Basements are weird.
Underwater if I had a basement.
I just want to say, by the way, that Fanslow does a really good job of actually covering up the idea that I keep on sending him pornographic pictures in between here, and he's been based the entire time.
Wait a minute. I'm jealous.
Well, I didn't get anything?
Yeah.
Oh, they were all pictures of you, pal.
Oh,
I've seen them then.
Oh wow.
was it Tommy and me or Tommy and Rich? I mean, that's what we need to know.
Oh,
Or were we
even
doing?
I don't want that visual.
Were we doing like the leaning tower? I mean, what were we
Oh,
doing?
jeez.
Okay.
Remember
All
that
right.
talk at the very
All right,
beginning about
everybody.
keeping it
Thanks for
professional?
tuning in.
Yes.
Yeah,
Gonna, uh,
Let's end on a low note.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I'm
For
thinking
those of
to
you-
end it- Go on.
Before we go
For
below
those of
sea
you that-
level.
For those of you that's been wondering why Mike hasn't chimed in, he's been saving his voice. He's actually going to sing the national anthem for us right now.
Mike sing and go.
Is he awake still?
He's sleeping.
I think he's
Will
asleep.
you sleep? Like fell asleep?
You know that if he licks his finger and goes like this, it goes.
All right.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Oh, he woke
I
up.
knew that'd get him up.
Mike sing the national anthem and go. And now. And go.
All right.
All right.
Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this.
Yes.
This is not about the coronavirus live stream. But we will tentatively have a date. We're going to try to shoot for next week, same time. We're going to see how that goes. So we'll see you guys later. Again, thanks to all the guests, and
wanted
thanks
to
for everyone
thank
showing up
our-
to Vision. Don't forget, guys, the reason we do all of this stuff is to push you. Get yourselves in some classes. Stay away from people, but get to classes. Get to large groups of people, but stay away from people.
When it's,
We're,
when
we're
it's
actually
appropriate.
we're actually working on a training event where everybody gets their own bubble.
Yeah.
Look for that.
Yeah.
Get close. Get disperse.
Yeah. But that's the big takeaway: is get trained, educate yourself, be better, be all that you can be in the technician world industry.
Grow together.
Yeah.
All right.
Brian.
All right.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. We'll
Night.
see you.
Bye.